kind of just want to use my teacher voice. Is anyone opposed to that? All right. I'm actually going to just use my teacher voice. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. All right, great. So this is my teacher voice, and I'm much better with this. I teach 4th graders, so this is what I use every single day. And don't mind me, I'm not going to be reading directly from this, but I just want to make sure that I touch upon some of the things that I know I wanted to mention. So first of all, I wanted to thank, again, the brothers of Delta Delta for bringing me out here. It has been quite some time, but I can still remember a few of the moments when I was at JCU for the first few times. One of the very first meetings when the colony was getting together. One of the very first times that I sat down with the now, Mark and I talked about it today. I can't even remember his name. Doug Sweet, who apparently has gone missing quite often. But through some of those meetings. So I had to refamiliarize myself with JCU. And so I was looking through the university website and some of the beliefs there. But then also, as I was stumbling on some things, I came across College Prowler. Has anybody ever been to collegeprowler.com? Which is kind of just if you're looking at a university and before you actually choose a college, it's an opportunity for students to tell other students what they might be coming into. And so there was actually a site designated for John Carroll University on College Prowler. And there was some information listed in a couple of them. And first of all, I have to check in with you about this. Do they really call Murphy Hall Dirty Murph?
Yeah. Yes.
Does it really stink?
Yes.
We love Dirty Murph.
There you go. Do they really call people who visit campus prospies?
No.
No. All right. So half of it's right and wrong. Okay. So before I get into the more serious things, what they had as one section of the website was things that people wish they would have known before they went to John Carroll. And I kind of wanted to think of, well, now that you're 5 years in as a Delt chapter at John Carroll, also tie in some of those with what are some things that you wish you would have known now, or you wish you would have known then, that you now know 5 years in. So on the John Carroll side of things on College Prowler, they said, well, I wish for John Carroll that I would have known about the core class requirements. I don't know if there's still a reality there with John Carroll. But on the Delt side of things, you're probably saying, well, I wish I would have known about the growing FAR requirements, and especially for the undergrads, how that document gets longer and longer and longer every single year, and how that grows. Somebody said, and I can't believe that they actually had to post this, but they said, going to John Carroll, they wish they would have known that going to class actually matters. And I found that pretty interesting. But in this sense, you probably are wishing you knew that going to class actually matters, because if you don't go to class, they're going to send me, as the DAA, out to your 5th anniversary to hound you about your grades. So make sure that we're performing well as adults here on campus, because I'll come back and haunt you. I know where you live. The third thing that someone says was, it's different from high school. And again, kind of masters of the obvious on the JCU website. But on a more serious note with this, I think what you're probably realizing now is you wish you would have known that Delta Tau Delta is different from any other high school club, sports team, any organization you would even join at a college level, because it's an organization based on values. And we're actually holding you to those values. And I know it's a little bit of a sensitive subject, but I was really proud to hear of some decisions that were made as of late that Mark was telling me about, where we really were able to hold some of our members to those values. And you deserve a pat on the back for that. I'm really sorry I'm screwing up your camera motion. Every time I go behind the pillar, he's losing his shot. Sorry. On the site, they say they wish they would have known for John Carroll, this will get a lot of laughs, that there's a lot of drinking. I don't know if that's true or not. It's said on the website.
Yep.
But I guess you probably, what you wish you would have known 5 years ago is that if that ever happens in the Delt chapter, Dave Seary is now in charge of the MRGs, and he's going to come and enforce them and lay down the hammer on you, I guess. But is this true too, that there's no clocks in the classrooms?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really? No? Okay, so somebody said there's no clocks in the classrooms. I wish I would have known that, because it's really irritating. So for you, it's probably that there's really no way to keep Ken Tubbs away, and that's really irritating for you. No? It's a roast now, yeah. And then the last thing, and then I'll get to my more serious points, but the last thing that they mentioned on the site that they wish you would have known was that they really needed to stay on top of things, stay organized, because otherwise they were just going to kind of lose sight of everything. And what you probably wish you would have known when you first joined or 5 years ago is that if you don't stay organized and stay on top of things, Mark Starr is going to continually hound you, probably worse than your parents, and that's a good thing in this sense of things. But then the other component that they put on the site was, what are some tips for success? So what I really wanted to share with you is just a few minutes of, I did have an opportunity when I traveled to work with a lot of colonies who are now 5 years, maybe beyond. And also, with my privilege of being able to serve on the Arch chapter, I've seen a lot of chapters that are celebrating not only 5-year anniversary, but 50, 100-year anniversaries. And a couple of tips for success from my perspective of what I think we can do to really make sure that when somebody comes back, if I'm old and gray, maybe I can come back to John Carroll's whatever anniversary that you might be celebrating that way. So the first thing, and I'm really happy that I was able to make it for today, but is keeping the ritual front and center. And I really appreciate your invite to me of being able to attend the ritual today and the time that you put into that. Even so good, you did it twice. One of my friends said, I won't talk to them. Is it the pie class? Yeah, I won't talk to them. But it's those chapters, really, it's those chapters that keep the ritual front and center and that actually not only perform it, but they actually understand it and talk about it with their members that are actually the long-sustaining chapters because they actually are making decisions based on what they talk about in the ritual. If you've ever had the opportunity to visit California, Chapman University in Orange County, Chapman is not much older than you. I think they're about 10 years, right? But Chapman is well known for their commitment to the ritual, and they just had the opportunity to perform the ritual for our newest chapter at Pepperdine University, which was just installed last weekend. And they are hitting it on all cylinders because ritual to them is paramount, and they do it well and they do it often. So that's my first recommendation of tips for success. Keep that centralized to what you do. Don't lose this founding day opportunity to do your ritual on a regular basis. The second thing is, and Mark mentioned this just briefly at the end of your chapter meeting, but it's never too early to start recruiting your alumni. There are guys you want to come back, and there are guys you don't want to come back. And we need to start recruiting, physically recruiting these men to come back, the ones that we want. And it's for two reasons. One, because in those times of stress and in those crisis situations, you're going to want those guys to be able to come back. Moravian, where I graduated from, is exactly like John Carroll. It's small. You have 3,000 students, John Carroll? Okay, we were at about 2,000 when I graduated. Liberal arts college, same size chapter, everything. And we're probably about 15 years old now. And at that time, just after I graduated, when the Iraq War was starting, the second Iraq War was starting, we had an individual who lost his life as a soldier. He was one of our alumni bad a few years, and he lost his life as a soldier in a friendly fire accident. And the chapter didn't know how to handle it because there was a lot of grief coming from undergrads at the chapter, but then there was also a lot of grief coming from alumni. And it took some of those alumni that they had recruited, they wanted to come back to really help to settle the waters. And so that was one way to assist, but then on a completely different note, but somehow related, that same gentleman who the chapter rallied around and alumni were able to come back and help to generate a golf tournament to raise money for this individual's children, to benefit this scholarship fund for this individual's children. Later on, a few years later, that money that was raised one year for that individual, one of the undergraduate members embezzled that money. $10,000 that was supposed to be set aside for a young 5-year-old's college fund. That was not the kind of deal we wanted, and it took some recruited alumni, ones they wanted there, to come back in, help the chapter deal with that situation, and also help to pave the way with the university, pave the way with the public, pave the way with the rest of the alumni, and it was because of those trusted individuals. So start recruiting your alumni now. Third, I would say, is tell your story often. I don't know JCU's particular story of the Delt chapter. I do know what limited knowledge I have from perusing John Carroll's website about St. Ignatius Loyola and the Society of Jesus and the idea of how JCU was founded. And then those of us that are Delts in the room, know the Delt story of the Neotropian Society and the founding of our organization. But there's got to be a John Carroll Delt story. And if it's not being told every single year, it's going to get lost somewhere. but that's what unites all of you together. So tell that story and tell it often. That's what sustaining chapters do. Fourth, and this is just because I'm going to go on my soapbox because I'm DAA and I'm going to say that, but you got to keep academics first. I teach 4th grade, like I said, and it's those students who are over in the corner eating paste that probably aren't going to, when they grow up, I hate to say this, but they're probably not going to be the best delts that we're going to want in our organizations to sustain. It's those paste eaters that are helping us to close chapters. And we don't want, we don't need the paste eaters in our groups. We need individuals, I don't have any paste eaters, but we need individuals who are really serious about their academic success, because it is shown time and again with chapters around the nation, when we recruit men who are serious about their academics, they have the rest of their priorities straight. And they're not willing to take risks that are going to risk their academic career or the career, or I should say the reputation of their organization as well. So focusing in on making sure that we're recruiting men who are academically successful and academically focused. And then 2 more. The next one came from, my lovely wife was introduced, and she works for Merck, Merck Sharp and Dohme pharmaceutical company. And she was mentioning to me that one of the principles that they have there at her company is encouraging everyone there to lean into discomfort. So realizing that conflict is okay. Families fight. And especially if we're within an undergraduate chapter and we're living together on a daily basis, we're going to have conflicts. But if we just let those conflicts sit and we don't actually address them, or if we don't address them respectfully, we're going to end up creating factions, which is going to end up breaking groups up. And that has happened all too often around the nation with some of our DELT chapters. I use the example of when I served in the Arts chapter, there are many times, and Dave can attest to this after sitting in some of those meetings, and probably so can Ken, but there are times when there are near shouting matches of disagreements between 2 men on the Arts chapter because they're so passionate about what they believe in. But then when we leave the room, everything's smoothed over, and we're back to being brothers again. And that's healthy. But if it's just left sitting, it's never going to be addressed, and it's never going to be solved. So again, lean towards that discomfort, lean towards that conflict, because it is actually healthy for your organization. And then the last thing I would say is that we talk a lot about integrity, and I even heard integrity within the mission statement, I believe, for John Carroll. Integrity is important to DELTs. There's a saying about how there's not one action that you can take that can prove your integrity, but all it takes is one action to disprove your integrity and to ruin your integrity. And the same thing goes with us as chapters. You can do all these great things, but there's not one particular thing that could make you a Hugh Shields chapter or that could make you #1 on campus. But we've seen time and again, it only takes one thing for that legacy that we mentioned at the meeting today, for that legacy to end. Just recently, within the last 2 years, we lost Beta chapter at Ohio. One of the longest running chapters, what was it, 140 some years, continuously running, and because of a serious hazing situation involving alcohol, one decision nullified that entire legacy, and that chapter is now closed. Same thing happened at Gamma at George Washington. Those decisions are everything. So, you heard during the ritual, what dishonors you dishonors it, but I want to end this on a positive note. What honors you honors it. And you're honoring not only the fraternity, you're honoring John Carroll, you're honoring yourselves by gathering here today. Continue to honor yourselves with these kinds of celebrations so that we can sustain, and someday down the road when we're all in the ground, we can still remember that John Carroll would be here as a DELT chapter hundreds of years from now. Thanks everyone for having me.